Hi, I'm Lorien Lawrence, the author of the Fright Watch series, and today I'm here to talk to you about what to do with a blank page. They're terrifying, right? They're staring you down, they're intimidating. It's the worst part about writing, and I'm here to give you a little bit of advice as what I like to do in my classroom and in my own stories. And that is simply to make a mess. Give yourself permission to be imperfect, right? I have it all the time with students coming up to me and just wanting to be one and done and write a draft and have that be the only one they ever write. And they just want to get to the page because they want to get it over with. And that's not the best way to approach writing. Writing is meant to be messy. It's meant to be a process with beginnings, middles, and ends. And so for beginnings, get a notebook. Get away from the blank page, get away from the Google Doc, get away from the Word document, and get a notebook and just start scribbling ideas. So if I'm trying to figure out if I want to write about, a vampire or a swamp monster in my next Fright Watch book, then I can just write down everything I know about both kinds of monsters. And then I can start to see, is there one that I'm writing more about than the other? I could draw a picture. I can draw pictures and draw everything that I know about the monsters. I can do stream of consciousness and just write whatever sentences come to my mind, whether they make sense or not. I can make a T-chart. I can make a mind map. I can just make a mess. Give myself permission to be imperfect. By the time I do that, and by the time I go through that kind of flash draft process, I'm going to have pages full of ideas. So then I'll have something to transfer to the dreaded Google Doc, and it won't be a blank page anymore. It will be the start of an idea, and it will be messy, but it will be a draft. So that is my advice to you. Bye.
Hi, my name's Tanya Guerrero, and I'm the debut author of the middle grade book, How to Make Friends with a C. I just wanted to talk to you briefly today about the blank page, the dreaded blank page. How do we start new projects? How do we continue with projects that might have a lag? Maybe you're stuck on something in the book. So for me, basically, the way I start projects is they kind of just come really organically, like I'm in the shower or doing something like cooking or taking a walk, something really mundane. And this idea comes to me for a plot or a character or some sort of incident that might make a story. And then I kind of give it a little bit more brainstorming. As a pantser who hates making charts and graphs and all sorts of outlines, that's not my thing. I write really organically. So as a pantser, I generally think of the beginning of a story and the end of the story. That's usually really clear to me. I know exactly what happens in the beginning and exactly what happens at the end. And then when I start writing, I kind of just fill in everything in the middle. Now, how do I sit down and start that first page? Generally, what I do is, since I know what happens in the beginning, the action that kind of catapults the main character into the story, I try to start stories a beat ahead of what happens. I find when I read a story, when I start a book, and I'm kind of pushed right into the action without having any investment in the character, I find that a bit jarring. So as a reader and a writer, I kind of prefer to start a story a beat ahead. So generally, I will, since I already know what the action is going to be that will move the plot and that will start the story, I think of a kind of mundane scene that I could start with to let my reader connect with the character a bit more. Like in How to Make Friends with the Sea, I had Pablo and his mom eating dinner together. And that's a very mundane thing. I mean, everybody eats dinner with their parent or with a roommate or whatever. But you can kind of learn a lot about a character from something like that because, there's going to be dialogue and everyone has a particular way of eating dinner. Like in Pablo's case, he doesn't like mixing sauce with rice. Like it's one of his things that give him anxiety. So you kind of see that his saucy food is separated from his rice. He has specific cutlery that he uses for certain things, like spoons for certain things, and stuff like that. So that happens right before the plot twist that will kind of move the story along. In my next book, All You Need Is Love, which comes out in 2021, I start the story where my main character, Alba, is just about to board a plane at the airport, and her mom is there to send her off. So that is basically the incident. It's sort of a mundane thing as well. I mean, people bring each other to the airport all the time and say goodbyes and whatnot. So we kind of find out through that emotional exchange at the airport with her mom of what's going on. And then we kind of become more emotionally invested in Alba's journey from that exchange. So that's basically how I start a story, how I start a blank page, is I look for some sort of scene that's kind of, quiet and mundane and something that happens in everyday life. And then I let the reader know my protagonists and get to know them better before I start the action. And that's it.
Hi, my name is Shannon Doleski, and I am the author of Mary Underwater, an upper middle grade, about a girl who builds and pilots a submarine. And today I am going to talk about some tips that help me out when I am faced with a blank page. So usually my hard part is not starting on a blank page. Like that's usually the easiest part for me, where I'm like have an idea and I'm just trying to figure out what I want to say and what my character sounds like. The hard part for me is in the middle of a story. So when I get stuck there are some tricks that I use to help me pass that. So my number one trick is I make a playlist and I listen to it while I write, or sometimes I don't listen to it at all. But anyway, I kind of assign one song that is the spirit of my book. And before I start writing for the day, I listen to that song at least once. If I'm really stuck, I listen to it like over and over and over again. But that helps me get into the brain mindset that we are going to go to work. We are going to work on this specific book, and this is the feel that we want it to have. My other trick is when I'm in that middle soggy part, is that I reread things that I've already written. Usually my first chapter is so full of voice and personality that if I reread the first chapter and then if I reread, what I wrote the day before, that really helps me get back into the character's personality. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, I'm Janae Marks, author of the middle grade novel From the Desk of Zoe Washington, and I'm going to tell you 2 tips on how I approach the blank page. So the first thing that I do when I'm starting a book or starting a story is I actually like to start out by outlining. Not every author likes to outline, so it's okay if this is not something that you want to do. But what I like about outlining is it helps you get into the blank page and not feel so intimidated because you've already planned out what you want to write for that day, or what you want to write for that scene or for that chapter. So, there's so many techniques. I mean, you can search online for the 3-act structure. You can search for the beat sheets. There's a great craft book for writers called Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody that has some really great tips on how to outline using a beat sheet. There are so many different ways to outline. And if you take some time to do that before you start, then approaching the blank page is not so intimidating. My next tip is to basically set yourself up for the next writing day after each writing session. So what that means is, let's say you're writing a scene or a chapter one day and you get to the end and you know the next day you want to start the next chapter. Well, to make it a little less intimidating for you to get to that next chapter's blank page the following day, how about you just write a few more lines of text, to start off that next chapter. So the next day you feel like, oh, you know what, I already started this chapter. I know exactly where to go from here. So before you finish a writing session, take some time to either start the next scene or maybe jot some notes down about what you want to have happen next in the story so that when you get down to write the next day, or the next writing session you have, you don't feel quite so intimidated because you've already planned out. So again, you can kind of tell, that I really like having a plan. I like, whether it's an outline or whether it's notes to myself, I like having some sort of direction to go in. So yeah, my big tips are to outline and to take notes or write a little bit extra after each writing session so that the next day you can kind of just jump right back in. So I hope this helps and happy writing.